Hey everybody, this is Harry. Peace and love coming to you. Um, Here late at night. It's midnight here. It's kind of dark. I'm sorry about the lighting, but um, it's kind of quiet right now. So I figured I'd just go ahead and answer Ian's community chat. He has done two in the past week. One I commented on in his YouTube channel. I didn't do a video for. But this one I decided to do a video because it's been a while since I've popped up. I think the last one I did was a squirrel stealing cookies from when we went on an outing to a park. So, very exciting, right? So, anyways, he's asked three questions, very good questions. The three questions are favorite decade, your favorite decade of films, and then your favorite year for film, and your favorite film from a decade. or your favorite film of all time, but I guess from the decade. And so this was pretty easy for me um, growing up in with my parents who were older um, when they had me, and there was a lot of classic movies being played on TV that I would watch with my mother or my father. Mainly my mother. My father was more of a television guy who watched cop shows or TV crime shows like the FBI, Streets of San Francisco, Cannon, Mannix. Those were his type of shows to watch on TV. But my mother was always into watching classic films. I remember on the weekends watching films, old films, and that's where I learned, about James Cagney, Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, um, a lot of those actors, Clark Gable, Tyrone Power, um, Claudette Colbert, um, Carol Lombard, and Greta Garbo. Rosalind Russell was another one my mother liked. So we would watch those, and then of course she watched anything. Mainly it was a lot of Abbott Costello. She liked Abbott Costello. She loved the Andrews Sisters because anytime Abbott Costello would have the Andrews Sisters on in their films, we would always watch it. And then we would watch um, the Godzilla movies and together. Um, which came out in the late 50s or the 50s and 60s. So we would watch those type films, and I got hooked right away. And then I used to watch a lot of older films in on late night TV during summer break. I would stay up late, and I always watched an off channel 6. Had Night Owl Theater, and there was another channel in Fort Lauderdale at the time called 51. It was a UHF channel, and they would play old movies. And there was a guy that hosted it. I can't remember his name, but he used to host a show, and he would introduce the films and then give little tidbits. Same thing with Channel 6. They had Night Owl movies, and that's where I fell in love with the Sherlock Holmes films and the Charlie Chan films. Mainly Charlie Chan. I always liked the Charlie Chan films, and his name was Big Red. I think it was his name, Big Red. Wore a red jacket, played piano, and had had an owl on his piano. So, um, so it was always classic movies. So my favorite decade of film would be the 1930s, and that was because I watched a lot of those films. A lot of character actors were like family because you would see the same character actors in the same in movies all the time, like uh, like Billy Gilbert, or uh, well, mine just went by Edward Everett Horton, people like that. They were always they seemed like they were in every film. So the 1930s were my favorite type of film. I always favorite decade of film. I have most of the movies I've ever watched are from the 1930s. If I had to pick a second one, close second would be the 1980s because I was a teenager um, in the 1980s, and so a lot of 80 films. Or watch a lot of films. As Bob would say, I went to the show, so I saw a lot of movies in the 80s. It had a lot of great memories and a lot of nostalgia for me. So the 80s would be the second, but the 30s, because that's my favorite time, uh, frame of film, or decade of film. The second question was favorite year of film. Now, I watched Bob's video earlier, and his was 1939. That happened to be mine too. So, a lot of great films were made in 1939. There's a lot of great films that were made also, like in 1973 or 1969, 1989. But 1939 for me was a big year for film. A lot of my favorite films came out that year. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, The Wizard of Oz, Young Mr. Lincoln, Stagecoach with John Wayne, Gunga Din with Cary Grant, and Nanachka, Dark Victory, Gone with the Wind, which I like Gone with the Wind, but I'm not a big fan of it. But I put it there because somebody will always say, "Where I will go with the wind," 1939. But it was a great year. There was a lot of other films. Bob mentioned Drums Along the Mohawk. Um, Cary Grant had a movie called Only Angels Have Wings, and then Name Only. So he had like three movies that came out in 1939. And so it was a big year. A lot of great films. The peak of Hollywood golden age was that year. And you got to remember, 1939. It was only 10 years, roughly 10 years, 12 years since sound came in. So there was a lot of advancements from silent in those 12 years, from the jazz singer on up to 1939. The advancement, the Technicolor films were being made, even though they were costly. There wasn't many. Um, Sound musicals. Um, the stories were better, getting better by that time, and the great actors that came along, like Jimmy Stewart, James Cagney, Pat O'Brien, um, Greta Garbo, uh, not Walter Brennan, but I guess we could say Walter Brennan. I figure him more in the 40s. John Wayne came big in 1939 with Stagecoach. So, yeah. Um, then the last question was your favorite film, and it's none. It's the film. My favorite film of all time is not from any of the decades that I had mentioned, but it's from 1942. My favorite film is Casablanca, and yeah, don't know why, but when I was younger, I bought the VHS tape of it, and um, just fell in love with it, and I've had it every incarnation at one point, except for um, the big disc, laser disc. I didn't have it on laser disc, but I did have owned several copies on VHS. I've had it on DVD. I have it on Blu-ray. This set's a Blu-ray set. It comes with a book and all that. The 70th anniversary of it. Great film. Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, Paul Henreid, Julie Wilson. I remember. I know this probably wasn't part of. I know this is not part of the question, but Casablanca for me. The first time I seen any clips of it, it was on our Humphrey Bogart had went through a, a revival sort of in the late 70s, uh, early 80s. Woody Allen did a movie called Play It Again, Sam. And then there used to be an actor that did a commercial that was dressed up as Humphrey Bogart, and that's how he made his living. He did commercials, or he would show up in films or variety shows playing Humphrey Bogart. So he kind of went through a little renaissance or revival in the mid or late 70s to early 80s, and they were showing a clip. Um, of Casablanca, and I was like, oh, I got to watch this movie. And yeah, James Higgins hates this movie, and it's not for everybody, but it's a great film. Claude Rains is great in this film. I love him. Um, it's my favorite movie of all time. But yeah, Claude Rains mainly sells it for me in this movie, as well as the performance of Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. Dooley Wilson, great as playing Sam, and yeah, 1942, a war picture, and there you go. All right, I hope I wasn't too boring and put you all to sleep. But anyways, thanks for watching. Um, and if you want to join in, please join in. Leave a comment or um, throw up a video and tell us what you think or what your favorite decade of film is, and your favorite film and your favorite year of film. And thanks, Ian, for posting it. It's great to hear you again. Take care.